Python isn't just for data science. It's also a fantastic tool for web development. Flask is a lightweight web framework that's perfect for getting a web application up and running quickly. In this example, we created a simple web server that returns, "Hello, Flask," when you visit the homepage. Extend this app by adding more routes. For example, add an about route that returns some information about yourself. Share your app idea in the comments. Let's build a simple web app using Flask. Open a folder in VS Code where you want to create your project. First, we need to set up our development environment. Create a virtual environment first. If you don't know how to create a virtual environment, check out the previous videos of the Python series. Once the virtual environment gets created, we need to install Flask. We can do so using pip. Open your terminal and type pip install Flask. Next, create a Python file where we'll write our Flask application. Let's name it app.py. With our environment set up, let's dive into coding. Let's start with a very simple Flask application. Open app.py and write this code. This is the most basic Flask application you can write. Let me break it down. First, we import the Flask class from the Flask module. Then, we create an instance of the Flask class. The name argument helps Flask understand where to look for resources like templates and static files. This app.route decorator creates a route for the home page. When a user visits this URL, the home function will be called. It will return a simple string that will be displayed in the browser. App.run runs the Flask app with debug mode enabled, which is helpful during development. To run your application, go back to your terminal and execute this command, python app.py. Open this URL in your browser. You should see "Hello Flask" displayed on the screen. Congratulations, you've just created your first Flask application. Returning a simple string is nice, but web applications typically return HTML pages. Flask makes this easy with template rendering. We'll be using Jinja 2, Flask's default templating engine, to render HTML. Let's create a basic HTML template. First, create a directory named templates in the project root. Inside the templates directory, create a file named index.html and add this HTML code. Now, update app.py to render this template. Import the render template and update the home route to open index page. If you reload the app, you should see the updated index page. Web apps often need to serve static files like CSS, JavaScript, and images. Flask handles this via a static directory. Create a static directory in your project. Inside static, create a CSS file, style.css, and add this code to beautify the index page. After adding CSS, we need to link this CSS file in your index.html template. Reload the page in your browser, and you should see the changes applied by your CSS. Now let's add some more routes to our application. For example, let's add an About page and a Contact page. For these routes to work, you'll need to create About and Contact templates in the templates directory. Add the code in both of these files. Feel free to design your own About Us and Contact pages. If you enter About route in your browser, you should see the About page. If you enter a Contact route, you should see the Contact page. Flask also allows you to handle query parameters. Let's modify the Contact page to accept a query parameter. Say we want to pass the user in the URL of a Contact page. We will get the user from the request and show a greet message on the page. Now, update Contact.html to display the user's name. If you now visit the Contact page with query parameter user equals John, the page will greet John personally. If no user parameter is passed, it will default to guest. Web applications often involve forms where users can submit data. Let's add a contact form to our application. In contact.html, add a simple HTML form. If we visit our contact page, we can see the form with name and message fields and the submit button. Since we have a form to submit, we need to handle the form submission as well. Let's create a route to handle the form submission. This submit form route handles post requests, retrieves the name and message values from the form, and returns a thank you message. Now, if we visit the contact page, fill up the form, and submit it, we can see a thank you message. Instead of just displaying a thank you message directly, you might want to redirect the user to a different page after form submission. Let's implement that. For that, we need to import redirect and URL from the Flask. Then, replace a thank you message with the redirect function and URL for function, with the URL where we want to redirect and the username. Now, when a user submits the form, they will be redirected to the thank you page. APIs are a crucial part of modern web applications. Let's create a simple API endpoint that returns JSON data. Let's add the user route to app.py. This endpoint takes a username as a parameter and returns the user's data in JSON format. Now, if you enter this URL, you should receive a JSON response with Alice's data. If you try a username that doesn't exist, you'll get an error message with a 404 status code. But we are using the static data here. What if we want to use a database? Most web applications require a database. We'll use SQLite, a lightweight database, for this example. Flask has excellent support for SQLite through Flask SQLAlchemy. First, install the package Flask SQLAlchemy. Next, let's set up our Flask application to use a database. Update app.py. Here's what we're doing. Import SQLAlchemy and configure the database using app-config. We configure the SQLite database using SQLAlchemy database URI. Define the connection string for a SQLite database named users.db. Then initialize SQLAlchemy with the app instance, storing it in the DB variable. Here we create a user model with fields for ID, username, and email. We use db.createAll to create the tables in the database if they don't exist. Now let's add some data to our database. We'll do this by adding a new route for creating users. The add user route adds a new user to the database. The get users route returns a list of all users in JSON format. Let's test these routes. Let's add user John with an email ID John at example.com. We can see the message user John added to the database. Now, let's check if the user is added successfully by visiting the get users route. As we can see, this route shows the added user John. Try adding more users and let me know in the comments below if it works successfully for you. And that's a wrap. We've covered a lot of ground in this video, from setting up a basic Flask application to working with templates, forms, APIs, and databases. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Building web applications with Flask is incredibly powerful and flexible. And with the knowledge you've gained today, you're well on your way to creating your own applications. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future content. Leave a comment below if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.